Aloha, this is Reverend Tim Lytle, and I want to welcome you here to Unity Church of Hawaii, which is at the base of Diamond Head Mountain. Here at this loving ohana, ohana is a Hawaiian word which means family, we celebrate the Spirit living as us. And we celebrate the spiritual principles that are very practical ways to live life. Please join us as often as you can and join us online as we celebrate these spiritual principles and celebrate the amazing spiritual being that you are. Aloha. Thank you, Christina. Thank you. Wow. What is it that you want to give birth to in your life? We're celebrating the birth of Jesus. We're celebrating a birth that occurred about 2,000 years ago, but we're also celebrating what we give birth to in our day. And it's up to us. It's intentional. It's up to us what it is that we give birth to. Some people choose to give birth to fear, to worry, to confusion. Others choose to tune in and align to the Christ nature and give birth to the Christ nature. And that is what the world needs. On the Advent wreath, which because of the nice breezes through here, the candles are burning down very, very fast. But the pink one represents joy. And that is today's theme, is joy. Don't we need more joy in our lives and in the world? I mean, there's enough bad news, right? I mean, bad news sells. So you turn on the news and you can watch plenty of bad news. And maybe sometimes at the end, they'll give us just a little glimpse of hope with some nice human interest story. But the rest of the time, they're telling us the worst of humanity interspersed with commercials of pain relievers. Just watch the news. It's interspersed with commercials of pain relievers because a lot of us are in pain and suffering instead of enjoying life. Now, here's something that I believe. We're here anyway. Why not enjoy it? Some people feel real proud of their sadness and real proud of their misery. And you're welcome to it. And, you know, I will hold you in the light. But I believe it's time for joy. That's countercultural. And unity is a countercultural message because we believe that we are not subject to the circumstances or moods around us, but rather that we can give birth to the Christ within and reveal from within that which is the presence of God. Because God is fully and completely present everywhere at all times. That means you are the expression, the outpicturing of that presence of God. You are that which you seek. You are that presence of God. All the health, wholeness, abundance, and joy coming forth as you. So it's important for us to give birth to that in our day. And people are looking for it. So, I want to share a passage of Scripture with you from Luke chapter 2, verses 8 through 12. This comes from a translation called The Voice. The Voice is a recent translation of the Scriptures that scholars sat down with poets. I think that's a good combination. Okay, let's find something scholarly that also sounds good and speaks to the heart. And so that's the Voice translation. Verse 8, nearby in the fields outside of Bethlehem, a group of shepherds were guarding their flocks from predators in the darkness of night. Now, first of all, Bethlehem is a Hebrew word, Bethlehem. Bet means house, and lechem means bread. So it's house of bread, house of sustenance. Have you ever been outside of the house of sustenance? You kept looking for it, but you were outside of it. And you're thinking, there's got to be more to life than this. We were listening to some Christmas music recently, and some of it was from like the 50s and 60s. Do any of you here remember Peggy Lee? Oh, a lot of you. Okay, a lot of you remember Peggy Lee. Some of you are like, Peggy who? But Peggy Lee had this one song that talked about, if that's all there is, then let's just keep dancing. You know, I mean, it was kind of a bummer song because it talked about, okay, that's all there is to this. But actually, there is so much more. Now, when we're outside of Bethlehem, outside of that house of sustenance, trying to live outside of our source, when we're based in sense consciousness, based in the circumstances, then we can get really drained. That's where we get burnt out. That's where we get tired. That's where we get grumpy. That's where we get fearful. That's where we get angry. It's outside of the house of sustenance, that inner Christ presence. So the shepherds were outside of Bethlehem. They were guarding their flocks, okay? So their flocks represent those thoughts, those messages within. They're trying to guard them in the night. Have you ever been in the darkness in your life? The dark night of the soul, where you wondered, is anything going to turn out right? Is anything going to go well here? What's going to be the happy ending to this story? What's the blessing in this? There's a little tool I use once in a while. I use it almost every week. Here it is. Someday I'm going to look back on this experience and revel at how I successfully came through this. Someday I'm going to look back on this and say, wow, what was I so worried about? And it gives me a little different perspective, you know? And it's true. I've made it through each and every one of those circumstances, and so have you. You're a hero. You've made it through so many things, more things than most people know about. There's probably been times of great pain, hurt, rejection, grief. You've gone through the night. Okay, so you know what the dark is like, right? But what happens here, verse 9, suddenly a messenger of the Lord. And that's literally what the Greek word angelos, angel, means, a messenger. A messenger of the Lord stood in front of them, and the darkness was replaced by a glorious light, the shining light of God's glory. They were terrified. Now me, I think that'd be kind of cool. You know, be out in the dark, you know, maybe falling asleep, and all of a sudden, whew, everything's lit up, and there's angels, and they're singing. I think that'd be kind of cool. But these people were terrified. If a person is used to the dark, if that's what a person is familiar with, the light can feel terrifying. It's odd, right? If we are familiar with misery, the misery we are familiar with may be comforting. That's odd, right? Because it's familiar. And then if something good starts to happen in our lives, and I've seen people like this, where something started to go good in their life, and then they got worried. And I've had people tell me, I don't want to tell people about how good things are going because I know something bad is about to happen. And so they didn't want to lift their sights too high, you know? They were terrified by something good happening. Wow, that was amazing to run into people like that. So if a person is used to the darkness, the light can feel terrifying. Now, what does the light do? It shows stuff up, right? So sometimes we don't want our stuff shown up. I was reading a monk that was writing about turning on the light. And when he turned on the light talked about turning on the light of a room. There evidently had been some animals inside the room that had left some remains, piles of remains. Now, this monk said the light did not create the remains. He used a different word. The light did not create the remains. The light showed it up. He could smell it. The light just helped him to see where it was so he could step around it or clean it up. And that's the way it is with us. We all got stuff. Light just helps to show the stuff up so that we can clean it up and work with it. Some people like to keep the light off and pretend, I don't have stuff. Everything's cool. But we're going, I smell stuff. So some people are terrified of the light because it shows up our stuff. All right, the messenger, the angel in verse 10 says, and this is all about the awakening process, the awakening to our true Christ nature, the awakening of experiencing oneness with God. That awakening of really connecting and being the light of God, which we are all here to be. Because thousands of years have gone into your appearance here today. Your appearance here today is no accident. Turn to someone next to you. Okay, introverts, take a deep breath first. Okay, now turn and look at someone next to you. Look them in the eye and repeat after me. It's no accident. I'm sitting next to you. We are meant to be here. We're here to do this together. We're here to wake up this world. We're not here to be mediocre. We're here to shine excellence. Give each other a high five or a hug. You're here to be the light, okay? So we're here to wake up. And the waking up process, here's some steps to it. First of all, don't be afraid. Now, this isn't the only time this appears in Scripture. This appears in Hebrew Scriptures, the Christian Scriptures, over and over and over. Don't be afraid. Did you all hear? Let's say that together. Don't be afraid. Let's say it again. Don't be afraid. Let's say that. Be brave. Be brave. Let's say that again. Be brave. You know, too many people are caught up in fear. You know what fear stands for, right? You got it. Okay, not all of you could hear it. False evidence appearing real. A lot of people are caught up in that. They're fearful. They're angry. You know, anger is often a coping mechanism when we are feeling fearful. Anger is this defense mechanism because we're fearful of something happening. But over and over and over, God's message and message of angels is do not fear. So, eliminate fear. Secondly, listen. Listen. Let's say that together. Listen. We are here to listen. Listen to that voice of the presence of Christ within us. My wife and I had the opportunity on Friday to drive to the North Shore and to go to the Benedictine monastery. I've been wanting to get up there for some time. I'm a Benedictine. I belong to the Benedictine order. It's one of my affiliations. It's an interesting journey. I'll tell you about it sometime. But anyway, I was wanting to connect with the Benedictines, and so we went up to the monastery on the North Shore. And what a nice, quiet place. Oh my goodness, what a quiet place. Oh, it was just what I needed. It's like, whoa. You know, suddenly there was no sound of highways, no sirens, no trash trucks. You know, usually the trash trucks don't run on Sunday, do they? They were running early this morning because they have tomorrow off. So it's like, wow. So Friday was like all this peace and quiet. No car alarms going off. There were chickens and peacocks running around. And so we were there with our friend Sheila, who's been staying there. And we took this hike by the Stations of the Cross. And then I took a hike alone up the side of the mountain. And there's this hike that goes up to the cross that is on top of this mountain. It was such a wonderful time of just listening and being quiet. And that's the thing. It's hard to listen if we don't give ourselves the chance to be quiet. Every morning and every night, I give myself the chance to be quiet, to be in the stillness. It's hard to listen to that Christ within when we have constant noise, right? And we live in a very noisy society. I've had people tell me, I can't meditate because my mind never quiets down. And what I tell them, very lovingly, the reason your mind never quiets down is because you don't meditate. We expect this magic to happen, that somehow, I'm going to be this monastic monk of hundreds of years of meditative experience, and I'm suddenly going to know how to go into the silence. It's a practice. That's why we call it a practice. I was a hyperactive kid growing up. I would dance in class. I would hit kids in the head. I'd be running all over the classroom. I was not a good candidate for meditation, or was I? Meditation was a lifesaver for me. So if I can meditate, you can meditate. We need to listen. So don't be afraid. Listen. I bring you good news, news of great joy. That's the theme. News that will affect all people everywhere. Today in the city of David, which is Bethlehem, a liberator has been born for you. He is the promised anointed one, the supreme authority. Let's see. They give them a treasure map how to find him. You will know you have found him when you see a baby wrapped in a blanket. Okay, so far that sounds like every baby, right? Wrapped in a blanket, okay. Lying in a feeding trough. Oh, that's different. And that's what a manger is. A manger is not a cradle. A manger is a feeding trough. That's what the animals would eat out of. Now, some of us look at our lives and we say, what can I do? There's so many issues in the world. There's so many things going on in the world, but I'm only one person. What can I do? My brother, who is the last heart transplant that was ever done in the state of Kansas before they closed the heart transplant program. He's doing excellent. He and his wife travel all over, and sometime I look forward to them coming and joining us here. But he was a kindergarten teacher for years. Excellent kindergarten teacher. And his kids would follow him around like ducks, you know. And he would teach them to do things like tying their shoes or doing other projects in the classroom. And they'd say, Mr. Lytle, I don't know how to do that. I can't do that. And he would say, show me how you can't do that. Show me how you can't. That is, in the effort, show me how this is impossible for you. And as they would try to do it, and as he would guide them, sure enough, they'd do it. Right? Now, some of us look at ourselves and say, who am I to think that I could do something that affects our world. How can I, just one person, infect this world with joy? How can I, just one person, make a difference in this world? Well, that's like that feeding trough, the manger. Very humble looking, but what did it contain? It contained this Christ presence. And that's what each one of you brings. You're no small stuff. You know, may look deceptive on the outside, but on the inside, you are the presence of God. You are that presence of God. That presence of God is calling out to you. Do you hear it? It's calling. And it's saying, will you listen? Will you put aside your fear? Will you listen to the Christ presence? Will you listen to this presence of God that wants to be born anew as you? So we not only celebrate the birth of Jesus, who I love and who has done so much in my life, but we celebrate the birth of the Christ, the divine presence, as us. We are here to give birth to the Christ today, to bring joy to our world, to not just settle back, not be in mediocrity, but to step out. My wife came up to me yesterday, and she had on these knee-high boots. And she had on these dainty little accessories. And she said, "What do you think?" I said, "I think you need to go big." How can you go small with boots like that? We're not here to play small. We're here to play big. We're here to be the presence of God and wake up to let the light shine. Be the light that you are. Mele Kalikimaka. Thank you.